just gonna start and I can't.
Nobody's even watching. Why is it in your head that somebody's watching you? Because there's really nobody. I'm really terrible at this too, so I'm gonna try my best. We'll look at the camera like it's our best friend.
Yeah, but we should look in the lens, not at us.
Oh,
I'm
really?
able to see.
Okay. I look at the lens. My best friend is in there. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Nadia.
And I'm Sandra, aka Mom.
As you can tell, today's video is a little bit different.
We wanted to show our appreciation of reaching 1,000 subscribers. Yay! We really are grateful. It means a lot. It really motivates us to keep doing this.
So we wanted to share some resin tips and tricks for beginners.
We are still beginners and we are also still learning. So if anyone has any suggestions, please feel free to add anything
in the comments down below.
Yes.
The first important thing that we want to mention is wearing the proper safety equipment.
To those of you who are just getting started, this is really important. What we use, and is one of the most important items, is a face mask. We would like to get a full face mask to have the extra protection. Nitro gloves, they must say nitro 100%. The other gloves they can see through. If you get resin, anyone has gotten resin on their skin, you get a resin burn, it is not comfortable. It's a little on the painful side, and it's really difficult to wash out.
Another important thing is to make sure that the room that you're working in is well ventilated, so you want to have a window or two open while you're working.
I prefer to open one window.
You'll also want to wear clothes that you don't mind ruining. This has happened to us several times, so wear some old sweatpants.
Anything that you don't mind not being able to wear ever again, because it will not come out.
The resin hardens on the clothes and you won't be able to wash it out, so
I think that's basically it on safety. I just remembered there's one more thing to add, is if you do use additives on your resin and you're torching, it's a good idea to have a fire extinguisher close by. We don't use anything in our work, so we don't have an extinguisher. Oh, I have a hard time saying that word.
Extinguisher.
Yes.
But alcohol ink and alcohol in general is flammable, so if you use a torch gun with alcohol, it can catch on fire.
We don't use the torch gun with the alcohol ink.
And neither should you.
The first thing I'll mention is make sure you cover everything. You don't want to get resin on a table or on the floor or on your carpet. So we use plastic wrap. One of the biggest tips for setup that we recommend is using baking paper underneath your work area. It is really easy to clean, but the other important thing is when you are torching, it won't wrinkle up like plastic. You can use the silicone mats, but I actually find the baking paper easier to clean up after, and I can reuse it just as easy as you can use a silicone mat. If not, it's easier for me to clean it up.
I think it's easier. You should also have a heat gun, a torch gun, and a scale. A heat gun and a torch gun can both be used to pop bubbles. The torch gun is notorious for ruining molds sometimes.
So be really careful that you're not holding the torch over your silicone mold for more than a couple of seconds.
We use the torch gun 1 or 2 times, mainly when we first pour our resin into the molds. That's when a lot of the air bubbles pop up, and again when we're close to being done.
And also once we're finished cleaning up, I'll check on it just to see if anything else has popped up or if any lint or dust has gotten on there. We all love those little pieces, digging them out. It's really frustrating when it's all done and you're like, oh shoot, I missed that one.
We use a heat gun mainly to blow out the waves in our ocean pieces, and we find that using a small kitchen scale is the best way to measure our resin.
You also want to have your cups and your mixing sticks and all that ready to use. I usually pick out my colors before I start. Every now and then I decide to add something else, and It just adds time, and since you only have a limited time to work, I've gotten stuck where I had to stop even before I wanted to stop. The other thing I wanted to mention about the heat gun is if you are finding your resin is starting to set, you can go over it with the heat gun to make it more fluid. And just make sure you don't go over it too much, or also hold it too close for too long, because you will burn the resin. Same thing with the torch, and it will leave divots. It won't be smooth, and you will have to recoat it.
A hack that my mom loves to use.
I love talking to Siri.
They've bonded in these past few months. They're like this, best friends.
I asked Siri to set my timer when I'm mixing, and he never fails. It's perfect.
You can also ask him what time it is, so you can keep track of when you started mixing your resin.
I do that too.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't have Siri, they might have what's that?
Samsung has Bixby. Maybe another phone has Dixie.
Well, it's been really useful because once you have your gloves on and mixing, you really don't want to be touching other stuff. It's also recommended not to work with resin when it's too hot outside. I've done that where it was over 85 degrees in the house, and I had to basically trash those coasters because they cured way too quickly and couldn't get the effect that I wanted.
If you live in a cold environment, or especially when it's winter, you should warm up your resin before you start using it. We usually do this by placing it by the heater for around 5 to 10 minutes.
And sometimes a little longer depending on how cold it is in the area that I'm working in. Other people also recommend to put your resin bottle in a warm tub of water for like 20 minutes. I don't do it. I'm afraid that I will drip some water somehow into the resin. This I'm 100% sure will happen with me, so I stay away from the water. We don't want the water in the resin. It will not cure properly.
You should also follow all of the instructions as listed on your resin bottle to mix your resin. It should be mixed for around 3 to 5 minutes, and if you don't mix it enough, it won't cure properly.
They do recommend scraping up the sides several times in the bottom. We find also that it's a good idea to pour it into another cup, and we do this with putting a stick in the other cup and then pouring the resin onto the stick to prevent too many air bubbles transferring into the other cup.
After transferring your resin into a second cup, you can let it sit for around 5 to 10 minutes to allow all of the air bubbles to rise to the top.
We actually reuse our plastic cups a lot of times. And we do have the big plastic measuring cups that you just bend the plastic and you can pull out the resin that has cured and reuse it again. We reuse those all the time. And then even the disposable plastic cups, we reuse those. I don't clean out. We just pour into the cured resin that's there, and I haven't had an issue. Maybe once or twice I got little pieces of cured resin, so you do have to be careful when you do that. But it's nice to not use so many disposable cups.
Yeah. When adding pigments into your resin, you should never exceed the recommended amount because it can cause your resin to not cure properly.
We also don't recommend using acrylic paints. We both use acrylic inks, and those are fine. With acrylic paste, if you use too much, it will also cause your resin to heat up real quickly and it might not cure properly. You do need to use a lot more pigment to get the color that you want. So it's really not worth it. It's better to invest and buy the pigments specifically for resin. They are much more intense and you need such a small amount, and I think in the long run you wind up saving money.
Once you're done, cover your resin piece with something so that no dust or fibers fly into your resin while it's curing. After your resin has cured and you're able to take it out of the mold, what we usually do is we sand the edges and we add a top coat, which adds a nice glossy finish. If you watch a lot of my videos, you know that we always add a heat resistant top coat. Most resins aren't heat resistant and can't handle a hot cup of coffee or tea on them, and that will leave a mark on your resin coasters or your resin tray. So we do always recommend adding a heat resistant top coat so that you'll be able to add hot cups onto your coasters. And another tip that we have is one that my mom loves.
Liquid latex?
Yeah.
I love liquid latex. Oh my gosh, it's definitely a game changer for me because I hated to do that part. I just I don't know, think about it. When I pour the liquid latex, I remember looking at some YouTube videos to see how it's used, and I realized, and maybe there are other people that do it like this, I just didn't come across it, that it is liquid. We're using it on resin. We're not using it on our face, so we don't need to brush it on, as some people suggest. I pour it on, and the other thing is we don't need to wait 6 hours for it to totally dry. You just need to wait for it to not be runny, and then you can turn it around and put it on the cup. It won't run off. And it'll dry with the resin, but the resin won't get underneath it because it's not going anywhere, it's not moving. So I would say that's my biggest tip, because that's the only disadvantage of latex, is that you do have to, well, from what I thought is that you had to wait 6 hours for it to dry, and you usually don't. Well, I wanted to add for the sanding the edges. I realized that if we do it within 48 hours, I find it easier to just scrape off the lifted edges with an X-Acto knife and just go around and smooth that so it's not lifted anymore instead of sanding.
Is there anything that you want to show in your...
Well, I was going to show before when we were talking. This is the heat gun that I use, but any heat gun will do, I think. We prefer to have at least 3 settings. You know, for the waves, you want to be able to have a lower setting on the fan, but a higher heat. So make sure you do have at least 3 settings for heat and fan. This is the torch gun we don't use one of those big full of resin.
We use it a lot.
And it's lasted 6 months already. I haven't needed a new one, and it's so easy to refill. I see people, they use the big industrial one, and I'm sort of afraid of that one. So I will stick with this one for now.
So that's about all of the tips that we have for you guys today. We are still beginners and we're still learning every day, so maybe in the future we'll make another video like this with more tips and tricks.
And maybe we'll be better at it next time.
Hopefully we will improve. That's the goal. Thank you guys once more for 1,000 subscribers.
We really do appreciate it.
Make sure to follow me on my Instagram, Summer Girl Designs, and my mom's Instagram,
Wild Heart Resin Art. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe.
You tell them, Mom. Listen to moms. Moms are always right.
And click the like button.
Click the like, the subscribe, comment down below if you like this video. Follow us on Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time.
Next time. I should have got YouTube on that side. You could have done that side.
That's what all the YouTubers do. Next time. Bye. Wait, we didn't show our tray.
That's okay, we don't need to show it.
You don't have a video on this one.
It doesn't matter. It just needed to be there. We're not showing, that's gonna be another video.
But you didn't film the process on this one.
Oh, I didn't know. Are you sure?
Yeah, it stops taping
Oh
when
my
you did
God,
the waves.
I forgot. I totally forgot. Yeah, that's good. Wrap it up.
That's a wrap.